personally, I don't think this works that well.
Matt Brooks Green is talking about this, only about this. Hello everyone, my name is Max and I'm going to be talking about this guy, Matt Brooks Green, who made a video called How to Learn a Language Faster in 2023, and I'm going to tell you why he is completely wrong in one and a half things that he says.
The key thing though is that we try and use material that is relatively easy. We have high comprehension of it, otherwise you spend the entire time just looking up translations.
So in the video, Matt Brooks Green actually talks about this guy, Stephan Krashen, and his literature. Now, I've also read this and this and this from Stephan Krashen, and I think fairly well his conclusions. So let's look first at what this guy actually says about comprehensible input, then look at what Matt Brooks Green says, and then see how those two things are actually not the same.
There are some things we all do the same. Let me give you some examples. Digestion. We all digest food the same, no significant individual variation. First you put it in your mouth, then you chew it up, then it goes down your throat, then into your stomach. That's how it's done everywhere. That's how it's done in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa. That's how it's done everywhere in the world. The visual system's the same everywhere. It's always the occipital lobe in the back of the brain. It's never in the side of the brain. It's never in the front of the brain. It's never in the elbow. It's done exactly the same everywhere you go. By the way, I used to use sex as an example of things everyone does the same, but some counterexamples have been pointed out to me recently. Actually, I saw this movie, if you really want to know the truth. Anyway, we all acquire language the same, and rather than just talk about it, I'd like to show you.
He says that language acquisition, a thing that is done everywhere in the world by all humans in exactly the same way. So his thesis is this thesis, the input comprehension hypothesis.
We learn languages when we understand a message, when we're interested in a message and we understand a message. Comprehensible input is the only thing that works, says Krashen, in language acquisition.
Which is actually one hypothesis out of 5, and all summarized in the book that this old man here is reading for us. And the first hypothesis is the acquisition hypothesis, which Matt Brooks Green also talked about, which means that we acquire a language, most of it subconsciously, and that is a mostly non-deliberate process. And the second hypothesis is the monitoring hypothesis, which basically says that grammar only helps a little tiny bit. And then the third hypothesis is this one, the input comprehension hypothesis. And this man is called Steve Kaufman. He's the founder of Link. That is the application that I always talk about, which is based on comprehensible input. He also learned about 20 languages to various levels himself. He's very well known in the language learning community, and he also knows Stephan Krashen. They have lots of videos together.
We have tried grammar rules. We have tried repetition drills. The input hypothesis claims, however, that comprehending messages is the only way language is acquired.
Just to summarize for you, whenever there is some input comprehensible, some kind of text, some audio, somebody talking to you, and that comes into your brain, and you understand the message, that means that you are learning. I'm going to teach you a little bit of Dutch right now. Pen, pen, stift, stift. I was trying to tell you that this is called a pen in Dutch, right? That's a message. It's not a very deep message, it's not a philosophical message, but it is a message. If you understand now that this is a pen and it's called a pen in Dutch, just like in English, then you've learned a little bit of Dutch. That means you've understood the message. So let's see what Matt Brooks Green is actually claiming and why he's wrong. So the video is called How to Learn a Language Faster in 2023, and he starts off by saying that you have to learn a language faster by doing what works. And then he's going to explain what comprehensible input is, according to him, and then he's going to make his mistake. So let's listen to him right now.
Language. And in fact, humans don't learn foreign languages, they acquire them.
You see, so here you notice that he's actually read Steve Krashen. We acquire language, meaning that subconsciously we understand messages and therefore we learn, right? So that's already Stephan Krashen right there. Then he goes on to explain what comprehensible input is.
The key idea here is, of course, to use comprehensible input, and that's material which you understand most of what you're watching, reading, or listening.
That's already the mistake, okay? So he says that comprehensible input is material that you understand, but that's not true. Comprehensible input is not material that you understand. Comprehensible input is input that you understand. So that can also mean things that you've changed so you can understand them, okay? So it's not like you have material that's comprehensible to you, that you can consume it and then you are learning. That's also true. But there's another way. There is also non-comprehensible input that you can make comprehensible, right?
Too, because you understand the words and phrases that are involved, and any new words and phrases, you can pick up them naturally.
Okay, so here he says that input that is comprehensible because you understand most words and phrases in it. Now, that's of course true. And then he actually makes a little thinking step that he does not explain. He says that it automatically means that you can pick up everything else from context. And that's true, but that's actually a specific language learning method that is called extensive reading, or in a broader sense, immersion. Okay, so immersion and comprehensible input are two different things. You can immerse yourself in comprehensible input, okay, but you can also do intensive reading, meaning that you don't immerse yourself, but you take a small text, translate every word, right? You look them up, or you have someone explain the text to you, or you look up the words and you draw every word, right? And therefore this little text becomes actually comprehensible to you without you being immersed in it. So he's actually here mixing things up. He's saying that immersion and extensive reading are the same as comprehensible input, but that is really not the case.
Because you understand everything else going on. So your level of comprehension is already relatively high.
Okay, so here he says again that you need to understand a lot of the text before you can use it as comprehensible input. That's really not true. You can use a text that you do not understand at all, then make it comprehensible using your own techniques, and then listen and read it, and then it will be comprehensible input.
And if you're a complete beginner, using pictures, hand gestures, even noises can also help you to understand the message.
So that's true. So here he's also talking about the message. Understanding the message means you are acquiring the language. That's great. And just like he says, you can actually use pictures. So he's actually saying two things that are conflicting each other, but he's not realizing it, I think. So exactly what he says here is true. You can learn words by using pictures, and you can not only do that when you're a beginner, you can also do that when you're intermediate. That's actually what I'm doing all the time, okay? And that's also what this man we saw earlier, Steve Kaufman, is actually doing all the time. He's taking really difficult books and texts, translating the words in it, then reading it again and again until the input has become comprehensible for him.
And your brain, which is essentially a pattern recognition machine, will just start to pick up the language without us having to force it. And so in order to learn quicker, we have to do two things.
He's again saying that comprehensible input means that you have to pick up things from context. But that's not necessarily true. I mean, that does happen a lot of the time. But when you're learning your first words in Arabic or something, you can't pick up anything. You cannot even read, right? And also I notice with Persian that still right now, I cannot just read the texts. I still do not understand enough to pick up things from context. I still have to really first translate many things, right? And then I can learn other little things from context. So then in the video he goes on to build on this wrong idea. So I'd like to show you how he does that and then respond to it, telling you how it actually does work. So he says that in order to learn quicker,
we have to do two things. One, only use material that uses comprehensible input.
How I understand this is that what he is saying is that you need to go and find material that you understand. But that is really not the case. You can take a text that is quite difficult and then use your own techniques to study the words in the text and make the input comprehensible, okay? So don't use material that's comprehensible. Use material that is okay, an okay level for you to make it comprehensible. I don't mind understanding only 50% of a text. I like struggling, right? Just like Steve Kaufman, the man that we saw earlier who learned 20 languages, loves to listen to podcasts that he understands only 10% of. But Matt Brooks Green himself, he doesn't like that. He likes to understand stories. So for him, it would be great to use material that he already understands. And maybe for you, it doesn't work that way. Okay, let's keep on listening.
That uses comprehensible input. And 2, get as much input as you possibly can.
Now with the second one, I completely agree.
Both of these will look different for different people, but I will explain them so you start to understand how to use them for yourself. People talk about trying to learn the most frequent words in a language in order to give them a head start, and personally I don't think this works that well.
So, he's going to explain why learning the first 100 words in a language doesn't work very well. And his argument for that is that actually you can just pick it up in natural context. But what he's forgetting is that people are actually using these 100 words to make their first input comprehensible. So Matt Brooks Green is again saying here that material needs to be comprehensible and that's what's good enough. But it doesn't work that way necessarily. I mean, it works for him, but you can also take something that is not comprehensible, make it comprehensible by studying the top 100 words, okay? He's going to make the same mistake when it comes to flashcards later on. Matt Brooks Green is talking about this, only about this. He says there is material comprehensible, you understand it, the message, and therefore you learn. But he's forgetting this. There is also incomprehensible input that you can make comprehensible, and then you understand the message and you learn. And this here, that's where flashcards come in, or teachers, or Google Translate, or pictures. And this is how people are different. By their methods, they differ in their methods to make input comprehensible. Now, Matt Brooks Green himself likes to use immersion and extensive reading. I like to use intensive reading and translation to make input comprehensible. Then I understand the difficult text finally, and that's how I then learn. Now, I said it in the beginning and I'd like to say it again. This is not anything against Matt Brooks Green personally or against his channel. I think he is a great language learner. He has a great channel. I think you should subscribe to him. So if you are not, then go over there and do that because he makes amazing videos. He knows his stuff. This is just a little misinterpretation of the conclusion of the language learning literature that I had to point out. And I hope it motivates you to keep doing what you're doing your way. And at the same time, I hope you've learned something. And if you like these kind of videos, then please subscribe. If you don't, then let me know in the comments. And I will see you when I speak better Persian, French, German, English, Dutch, and Spanish. Bye.